Awesome. All right. So where we're going to be picking up today is on page 76. And last week we were diving into steps 6 and 7, and now what we're going to look at is steps 8 and 9. So we are on the third full paragraph where it says, now we need more action. So page 76, paragraph 3, now we need more action, which I'm just going to throw out from the very start. That's a little rude. Now we need more action? I mean, come on. Did you all see? I just did a thorough house cleaning and then I did a fifth step, man, and that took some time. And then I took, okay, fair enough, fair enough. I had a quiet hour. I did get an hour break of quiet. But then I did my 6 and 7, and now you're wanting more action? It's almost like this chapter is called Into Action or something. So it's a little action heavy. Pew pew, action. So now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Now, that is a theme that we see throughout this book. And there's a lot of threads and a lot of themes that we see, but the theme of faith without works is dead is super interesting and super important, and really in many ways is the crux of what we're talking about. I need faith, but I also need works. And so what is faith? Faith is a belief, the belief that maybe these 12 steps could work for me, the faith that maybe there could be a power greater than myself, like just maybe. And I've got to have a little bit of that, but I don't need as much of faith as I need works. And works are the tangible, practical actions of all 12 steps. And so what it's saying is faith in the 12 steps, faith in a power greater than myself, belief in the 12-step fellowship that I'm a part of. Without the actions of the 12 steps, and I will relapse. And as Rob put in the chat, it's a warning. So I can believe that this thing will work. I can like that this thing will work. I can be jazzed about the fellowship and the meetings, and I can love the coffee. It's BYOC for the virtual ones, though. You gotta bring it yourself. I know it's rude. Where's my hospitality? But I can love the coffee. I can love the fellowship. I can love feeling a part of something. Man, I could have the world's best sponsor. I could have amazing friends. We could do fun and cool things like hang out in Vancouver at the International together. Woo, Debbie! We can do that. But if I do not have the all 12 steps, and I have this illness, I will relapse. Nothing less than all 12 steps, and I will relapse. All 12 steps is my foundation for life. And if I don't have that, I have no foundation. Which, I'll be honest with you guys, that's like not great news. I kind of want a foundation of just like thinking about things. I don't want a whole foundation of action. And I love Paul changed his profile picture, so it's like giving a thumbs up. So he's just agreeing with everything that I say. That's the takeaway. Anything that I say today, Paul's like, yep, absolutely. So it says, let's look at steps 8 and 9. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. And this is interesting. So for a long time, I sort of took the view that it was step 8 and then step 9. And I had an experience that I'm going to share with you guys. I had a friend, she was kind of new in recovery, and she was going to share. Oh, we are on page 76, and we are at the third full paragraph. We didn't get too far. We're at the second sentence in the third full paragraph, because that's the pace that we go when I'm doing it. I should be like, there's other ones that go faster, exciting, but then there's some that go slower. I don't know. I was trying to sell you on I was going back to announcements in my brain. That's where I was. I'm like, announcements, woo! All right. But I had a friend, and she was chairing her first ever meeting. Now, in the part of the world that I live, to chair is to open the meeting and to ask people to read and then to facilitate who shares. That's what it means to chair a meeting in the part of the world that I live. I know it sometimes has different meanings. So that's what she was asked to do. And she was like, Paige, can you come and support me? And I was like, Absolutely. I had a little bit more time then because genuinely one of my favorite things to do is to support people. I was there, I was cheerleading. I'm like, whoa, you go, girl. You're doing great. I'm here. And so I make sure and I show up early. It was on Zoom. I show up early and she's like, we're on step 8 today. Could you pick a reading out of the book on step 8? And I'm a big book gal, so I grab the book and I read. And I just read. I don't add the commentary that I'm adding right now. I just read the this paragraph that we're on and the next paragraph because that feels like step 8. That's a step 8 discussion. And then what happened is now we know that nobody owns a meeting. But you know, when there's a guy that is like clearly, it's his meeting. Well, he was the first person to hop in to share. And do you know what he said? He said, there is F all about step 8 in the big book. And if you want to learn about step 8, you got to read the 12 and 12. And like the spiritual giant that I am, I responded with, a raging resentment. Oh, she got me. I'm like, oh, you jerk. That was kind of the last thing that I had to do that day. So I wrote some inventory on it in my evening review, and I had a look. And just so you guys know that I actually did, what I could see is that I can attach my sense of value and worth. And I know nobody here relates to this, but you might have a sponsee down the line somewhere that might relate to this. But I seek my sense of value and worth from being right, from being seen as right. And I know, it's just me. Nobody else can relate to that. Uh, and so that's what was happening. And I need to be right. I need to be seen as right. And my codependency and my seeking my value and worth from things outside of myself, and I have this need to control my ego and image that I've got to maintain. And so I saw that fear of what people think, fear of judgment, all of that. Now, again, I did this after the inventory. So the spiritual giant that I was. And like, here's the deal. If you're going to read the book on your own, this is how we read it on our own, which is like, wait a minute, I got to prove that jerk wrong. We have spiritual experiences when we read it together, but I don't know anyone who reads it by themselves without trying to prove some jerk at the meeting wrong. That's how we read the book on our own. Yeah, that'll show them, that'll teach them. And you show up at the meeting with your like carefully worded argument to point out all the flaws in their theory and their idea, and they're not even there. So maybe you guys couldn't ever relate to doing that. Tell me about being so spiritual. All right. I didn't go back to the meeting and prove them wrong. I didn't mention it. But what I did do is I saw steps 8 and 9 in this book in a whole new way. It is not step 8 over here and step 9 over here. As we go through this part of the chapter into action, what we are going to see is step 8 and step 9 are intertwined. And we're going to see direction. See, the 8th step is all about a list and all about building willingness. And the 9th step is all about going and actually making those amends, setting right those wrongs. And we're going to see directions for building the willingness. And a couple for the list, but mostly for building the willingness. And then we're going to see directions on how we make the amends. And so they work together. And I'm actually, we're not too far in, but I'll share something with you guys. For a long time in the rooms, I would hear it is step 8 over here and step 9, and you only worry about step 8. And when you're on step 8, you only think about step 8. Don't overwhelm yourself with step 9. I don't know about that. Bear with me. And if that works for you, do it. But here's what my experience was: is I would make my list and I would get super duper overwhelmed and afraid. And I would build up the case and I would build up the prognosis, and it's bad. And what I've started doing with sponsees, especially ones that have been around a little while, but we start making a couple of amends and then we make the list. And then we focus on, I know, it's a little bit different. But here's why, is we're already having that experience. If I'm doing a list, I find I can easily, and feel free to don't do this. And actually, as I share with you step 8 stuff that I do and how I focus about building willingness, I'll share about some stuff that isn't in the book. And so feel free to ignore everything and anything that I say that is not in the book. But I will say we have a lot of fun in step 8. Oh, we have a time in step 8. But what I found is helpful is to get them moving with 3, 5, or 10 amends. Just let's write them out. Let's make your approaches. Let's go. And then we'll formalize that list. Because let's dive in and get that experience. And here's the thing. Here's my experience. And again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I found it to be effective. And I found that where I am most likely to sit and stall myself out is on step 4. Why? Because I'm afraid of step 5. And step 8. Why? Because I'm afraid of step 9. And if I'm already in the pool, I'm already in the deep end, I'm already swimming, and I don't have time to be afraid. So let's talk about that list. It says we have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. Wait a minute, where did that list come from? I already have this list. Well, it goes on to say, we made it when we took inventory. What? I have been spiritually bamboozled. What do you mean? And so what happened is I had a look at my resentments and I saw those stupid, smelly jerks. And then I took some spiritual action. It was flipped. Turns out I was the smelly jerk. I'm not going to call myself stupid. That's a little derogatory. But turns out that I had set the ball rolling. Turns out I had stepped on their toes first. Turns out in most of the cases there was an amends. Rude. Rude. And then, of course, I look at my relationships and my sex harms. Well, obviously, I caused harm there. And so that is the thrust of where most of the names come from on my 8-step list. Will there be people on my 8-step list that aren't in my step 4? Yeah. Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay. We don't have to overthink it. We don't have to overcomplicate it. And if you're here in this moment and you're like, nope, too late, already overthinking, already overcomplicating, can't relate. I'm kidding, because I was doing that. Rob was like, hey, so for the coverage in September, I've got some options. I'm like, I'm overwhelmed with too many choices. So believe me, I relate to that overwhelm. I live there. But what I want you to know is if you're like, who should go on my 8-step list? I'm not sure. We have a very useful litmus test. And the litmus test that we have is when they come to mind, you experience the twisty and the resisty. You get that in your stomach. So you get, and it's like, I don't wanna. Like, if you're experiencing the twisty and the resisty, that's a good sign that it can go on your 8-step list. Yeah, yeah. And welcome, guys. We're on page 76. We're in the third full paragraph where we started, because we haven't gone very far, because that's how we do. Woohoo! And so, yeah, if I'm not sure, guess what? Guess what? I can put their name down and I can talk to my sponsor about it. And this is also why it can be really helpful to do our 5th step with our sponsor. Again, we don't have to, but our sponsor is going to have an idea of who needs to go on our 8-step list after hearing our inventory. And so that, I'm just throwing it out there, no pressure, but I was going to say no pressure and then followed up with, but I hear that's what all the cool kids are doing. That is peer pressure, Paige. Stop peer pressuring people. All righty. So we have this list, and it says we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now, if I'm wondering, was my inventory fearless and thorough? Well, I can ask myself, did it feel pretty drastic? And if it felt pretty drastic, that's a good sign that I have been fearless and thorough. Now, I'm going to share with you guys a really helpful way of formatting your 8-step list. And it's not listed this way in the book. So again, if you're like, I don't want to do it that way, don't. Just ignore me. You can mute me. You're on a device. You just turn that volume all the way down. You won't hear from me. But this can be a really helpful way in which to format the 8-step list. And it is to take the list of people that we have from our 4th step, from our resentments, from our sex inventory, and from our heart and from our gut, and to put them into what I like to call these columns of willingness. Now, poor Paul, he's like, I can't get rid of Paul, or I can't get away from columns no matter how hard I try. He's given the thumbs up on that. And it does not matter It does not matter. If if the person is passed on, if we owe the money and we don't have the money, we're just putting them in these columns based on how willing we are to make amends, based solely on our internal sense of willingness. So if they were like right now, the right now column is I would make amends to them right now. If they came into the room, or if I'd text them right now to make the approach, or I'd call them to make the approach, I'm more than open right now. Doesn't matter where they live in the world, doesn't matter, just if they're right now, right now. And then if you feel a little bit of hesitation, I'd rather do it a little bit later. You can put them in the later columns. The maybe ones are the ones that we feel a little unsure about. And the never is also known as the F no over my dead body. Have you lost your frickin' mind page column? And that's what it's formally called. And so I'm just putting them there in the columns of willingness. And what we can do is there are different ways in which we can build willingness. So when I sit down with sponsees and we just kind of dive in to the inventory process, that helps us to build willingness because we have that experience of making those amends and finding that they go well. And so an intuitive place for a lot of people to start is with their right now list. I'm willing to do them. I'm like, let's go. Let's make those amends. Now, so that's one way to do it. And what happens is as we make those amends, our willingness grows. Momentum builds momentum. So the more that I do, the more that builds momentum, and the easier it is to then make further amends. And so we'll find that our laters become more palatable and our maybes slide over, and we start to have a little bit of willingness to do our nevers. And as we move forward in that order, we can move and it gets easier and easier. So that's one way of doing it. Now, one of the things that I'm big on is sending a lot of approaches right away. And that idea of, girl, you want me to send 10 approach messages? Yes. Yes. And one of the things is like the 8th step and the 9th step is experiential. If I've never made a lot of amends before, I think, oh, I'm going to be overwhelmed. They're all going to get back to me right away. Those of us who've sent out a bunch of approach messages, we know we live in a ghosting culture. They're not getting back to us. I'm not going to hear from them. I'll have to text them again in a couple weeks. Hey, about that amends, no, they're not going to get back to us. But also, I have this experience with sponsees where I have a couple sponsees and a grand sponsee. And what they did was they started with their never amends. And with the never amends, the value in that is that idea, if I am terrified of this process, I'm absolutely petrified to make amends, well, I can rip off the Band-Aid. And if I do the thing that I am most afraid to do, those other ones seem a lot easier, don't they? And here's the thing, and I do this for sponsees, but I'll do this for anyone. If you start with your never amends, if you start with your absolutely not over my dead body, I will never make amends to that person, no, but you make amends to them first, I'll get you a little patch that says amends badass. I have had a couple of those made and sent out, and I genuinely, so what's another way to build willingness? Because the 8th step is all about the list and all about willingness. Well, another way to build willingness is me to bribe you, apparently. Not in the book, but I found it helpful. So if you're struggling with willingness, and man, I will bribe you. And I was working with a sponsee one time. I did this with a couple of sponsees where we played this game. Now, I want to be very clear. This game is one that I've only ever played with their consent. And actually, as we go in and talk about amends, you'll find out that I am big on consent. A lot of times as we're approaching amends, we come up with these fears. And some of you guys know it's like, I can't reach out to that person for an amends. Paige, it's Arbor Day. I can possibly bother them on Arbor Day. We build up these things, and I'm really big on, we could just ask for consent, and we could acknowledge that they might be busy, and if they are, we could say that we'll meet them at a time that's convenient for them. Crazy, but So this way of building willingness that I do with some of my sponsees is we play a game called Amends Roulette. Now, I do not play this with any person that I'm working with that also has a problem with gambling, because that is what we call discernment. But it's this game called Amends Roulette where we have, I have an iPad or a tablet or whatever, and I put their 8-step list in a virtual spinning wheel, and we spun the wheel, and again, I want you to know that that is with their consent. I don't do that with people that are not open. You can tell when they're open and when they're not. And I had this really cool experience with this sponsee of mine. She was like, when you're showing up to your sponsee or your sponsor, and you're just like, you've had it, you're gonna have a mentee B, and you're just like, you're willing to do anything because everything sucks. One of those. She was there. It was great. And so she's like, F it, send it. Let's do Amends Roulette. And as we were doing it, she was like, we were talking about the process, and she's like, telling me about some of the anxiety and the stuff, and we were talking about like who wouldn't she want it to land on, and she mentioned her father, and she's like, I never want to make an amends to him. And we started talking about it. We started talking about what the amends would look like. And in that moment, as we're building that willingness, she's like, you know what, send it. And we sent an approach. It was an email, because that was what she had for contact for him, to her father. Now, her father was this monster, this ogre in her life. And she, sends out that email, and she, here's the thing. If you're having any of the digestive issues going the other way, you're a little blocked up. There's 2 things that'll cure it. It's the meat and coffee. We know that'll get you moving, but also go make those amends you don't want to do. Oh, that'll clear you right out. So we were having those pre-amends digestives, and that was happening. But what happened is they were able to make an amends. She was able to make an amends to him. And the amends that she made what she was making amends for was something that was like eating her alive. This thing that she's like, man, I am the worst person, and this guilt and this shame. And he's like, oh, I don't even care about that. And so often that is what happens in amends. And the relationship is not perfect. They're not close, but there is a healing that happened as the result of being willing to take action that they weren't otherwise, that my sponsee was not otherwise willing to take. And so again, so amends roulette. Another thing that I've done in the past is we've played amenders. And if you're like, I'm sorry, a what? If you guys remember Dr. Bob, he shows up after ruining Mother's Day, and Bill Wilson's there, and Bill Wilson carries the message that would become Alcoholics Anonymous. And Dr. Bob is like, you have no idea. You're the first guy that speaks my language from experience. I am willing to do absolutely anything. Not amends, but absolutely anything. I know nobody can relate to that. So he's willing to go to any lengths, but not amends. And so what happened is Dr. Bob, he was trucking along famously, and then goes to Atlantic City on a medical conference and gets rip-roaring drunk. Man, he goes on a bender to end all benders. He shows up, gets sobered up, sort of, because he's got surgery the next day. Performing, not receiving, colorectal surgeon. He was given a couple goofballs and a bottle of beer, which again, we don't know how the patient we don't know how that went with the patient. And there's probably nothing more anxiety inducing than a like not quite technically sober proctologist. He's either a little hammered or he's got the shakes. Not an ideal situation. But I will say, with all the historians that we got, shout out to the history husbands. With all the historians, they probably would have found a lawsuit if the patient didn't make it. So, but what he did is he, was given that, he performed the surgery, and then they didn't hear from him for the rest of the day. And what he had done was he had gone and he had made all those amends he was afraid to make. And the date of his permanent sobriety began with the date that he took the action he did not want to take. You see, when we relapse, it's not what happened. It was not the winds were blowing. It was not it was what was the action I did not take? Because a relapse, for somebody whose illness is diagnosed in this book, a relapse is inevitable. And the only thing that will stop it is a spiritual awakening, and that we grow and that we deepen for the rest of our lives. So it is not what happened, it is what did I not do to allow that spiritual awakening to happen? Or what did I stop doing? And that spiritual awakening began to erode away. And so after his bender, he went on a mender. Woo! And I have little sticker designs that I make for that. Dr. Bob's a mender. Woo! And so what I have done with sponsees that are of the competitive variety, and I've had a couple that are like, I'm not competitive, and then I throw them in an amender, and they are going for it. They are cutthroat, you know. I do like an amender competition, and I sort of set it up like a UFC fight poster, like they get their like little amender nicknames. Again, this is not in the book. So if you're like, I think that's stupid, great, it's stupid, don't do it. I'm over here having fun. Putting them in like Sponsy Fight Club, but for amends. And so we've done like one-on-one battles, the race to 5, the race to 10. We've had those, and we've had teams. We had Team Canada versus Team USA. I had to issue a lot of spiritual green cards because USA was getting smoked and we were running out of Americans. So we had to get people to join Team USA. We had teams and things like that. And like we have like Paul was on Team USA. So we did like all of that. And is it silly? Yes. Is it something just a little bit extra? That gives, yes, some of you are like, girl, that's extra. It's extra. I know, read all about it. I'm extra. But one of the things is like when we're talking about building willingness and we're talking about building momentum, I don't care if it's stupid, if it helps us to make the amends that I don't want to make. Because my life depends on making that amends that I don't want to make. And so if it is, I got to make the amends so that guy doesn't smoke me in the amender, absolutely. If it's, I got to make the amends so I don't let my teammate down, absolutely. If we play amends roulette and that helps us make amends we weren't going to do, amazing. If a silly little badge that I give you for making the amends that you never want to make, then starting with those, helps you make the amends, amazing. Who cares as long as we do it? Sometimes we get stuck on our motives. And at no point in 8 and 9 does it tell us to worry about our motives. And sometimes we're like, oh man, what about my motives? If I go and actually make the amends with God's guidance and the guidance of a sponsor, it will be fine. Y'all know that God can use terrible motives? How do I know? Because we're all here and we're all sober. Who had good motives before coming here? None of you. Okay, maybe one of you. Maybe one of you was like, no, I'm just here to be of service to others. That's how I showed up and darkened the doors. Okay, cool. I was here for the coffee. I'm just kidding. I wasn't. The coffee is not, I'm sorry. The coffee is the draw. We have great coffee. It doesn't make the spoon stand up or anything. All right, you got to chew it. Also, I will say we are people that are like newly sober, drinking coffee at 8 o'clock at night and be like, what? And like chugging it back. And back in the day, you'd go for fellowship after. So you go to the like Greasy Spoon Diner and you'd have some more coffee, like just on tap, that coffee. And be like, why can't I sleep? You know, that's who we are. I know, just me, not relatable. All right. And so whatever helps me to build that momentum. So it says we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. So if I'm having a look at the actions that I've taken, the inventory that I've done, if it's felt really drastic, that's how I know I'm doing this thing right. Terry talks about how this is a book of mirrors. I think he stole it from Babe. But this is a book of mirrors, and I can hold my experience up to that light. And I can do that with the illness, but just as much as I can do that with the promises. And with moments like these, where it says, we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Did it feel drastic? If so, I'm doing a good job. It says, now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. Oh, that's rude. What do you mean? I can't just hang out in the basement and hope they come. You know what's annoying? That at no point has anyone that I have ever owed an amends to just tromps their way through my living quarters. Well, other than people that I live with that, I've had to make amends to. But like I don't wait for them to come to me. The direction is that I have to go out and find them. I've got to go after them. That's what I've got to do. And so sometimes I've been in rooms where it's like, no, you just got to put them in your path, and God will. Like, God will put them in your path. I had this experience with a woman that I owed an amends to, and I could not find her. And as some of you guys know, I'm good at finding people. I will scour the internet. I will find people. I could not find her. So what had happened is she got married and changed her surname, and I could not find her. And I'm praying, and I'm trying, and who shows up in my email inbox was her reaching out to me. So absolutely, will God put these people in our path? But I've got to go out and find them as well. I've got to put effort in finding them. And if you're having trouble finding them, I'll help. I won't make any promises, but I will give it a good Google search. Now, also, anyone here? No, you don't do it. I won't ask you to do a show of hands. Don't raise your hands. Don't use the hand react thing. You'll see why in a minute. Anyone here ever have a problem of letting go at the end of a relationship? In a manner that's often called stalking. No, don't raise your hand for that. This is a perfect example of last week. We were talking about how a defect in my hands, that is harmful as heck. But if I let God use it, man, we can, yeah. Well, don't stalk, but we can use that defect of character to find the people that we owe an amends to. I've worked with some people that were like, yeah, I just can't stop looking at my ex on Instagram or on whatever. I'm like, wonderful. We will be using that skills to find all the people you owe an amends to. Off we go. I will let you know that I don't have sponsees that share my enthusiasm in the 8-step process. They're not with me about like, woo, amends roulette, have fun. It is a begrudging sort of activity. But I mean, I have fun, and I think that's the takeaway. So we go out. So I've got to go and seek them and find them. And that finding is often part of the 8-step process. Finding them can help build that willingness. And again, we'll talk about other ways in which to build willingness. But it says we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. And one of the things that I've heard a lot in the meetings is, I can't make amends. I've said sorry 1,000 times. And I'm a Canadian, so we've got to up that sorry. I'll bump into an inanimate object and be like, sorry. It's part of the citizenship. Just kidding. But I'll say sorry 1,000 times, and it's important to understand that an amend is not a sorry. An amend may include an apology. It is not the end of the world. We don't have the language police. If a sorry comes out in the amends process, that's not the end of the world. But to amend is exactly there. It's exactly that. Repair the damage done in the past. Now, Rob's going to probably put one of his super cool dictionary definitions in the chat. Pew pew. And I've got my 19, but you don't have to. Like, don't just do things because I told you to do them. You could be like, no. You can just put in the chat like, no, Paige, I'm not doing it. Awesome. It goes on. In my 1930s dictionary, because I have one, because I'm super cool and fun at parties, my 1930s dictionary says to amend is to free from fault, to improve, and to correct. So what I am doing is I am repairing, I am restoring, I am freeing from the fault that I caused, and I'm correcting the actions taken. That's what we're doing. It's not an I'm sorry. It is an attempt to repair the damage done. That's what we're doing. And so we can do that. And I'll just talk about it because my little hamster on a wheel brain is thinking of it. So let's talk about it. So it's when we're, what do we do if we're a chronic relapser, or we've been relapsing, or we've broken our heart 1,000 times, I couldn't possibly make an amends. Yeah, we can. We can just communicate. I know, crazy. So did you know with those people where we have hurt them again and again and again, we can acknowledge that in the amends. And we can say, I know that this amends might not carry weight to you. My hope is that it will begin to be the process through which I demonstrate the change. And again, because oftentimes when I'm in step 8, I'm full of fear. And again, it's like I couldn't possibly. And it's like, yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. Which again is the worst for people that I work with, because they're like, I can't. I'm like, nah, here's a simple, easy way that we could do it. And it's like, drat. But actually, a lot of times it's like, oh, I can. And we'll talk about it in a little bit, but one of the ways in which I help to build willingness, especially in those cases where it's like, I don't know how I could make amends, or it feels awkward or uncomfortable, I don't know what to say, I will sit with my sponsees and we will write out the amends together. And so that they will have a script that they can go and take. Do they have to read it off as a script? No, but it's fine if they do. Did you know you could acknowledge that as well? Some of them are like, but I couldn't. They're going to think it's not from the heart. You know what we could do? We could just say, I just want to acknowledge that I have a script and I'm reading from it. But I want you to know that that does not mean that this amends is not from the heart. The reason I'm doing this is because this amends is important to me. And repairing this relationship is important to me. And setting right the wrongs that I have caused you is important to me. And I'm reading from this because I don't want to leave anything out. I don't want to miss anything. So we can acknowledge that. I know, crazy communication. You know, in the 9-step promises, when it says we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us, like basic human communication is what that is in my life. Like I can just communicate. Wild. Like there are people that are just born with that ability. I need the power that created the universe to flow through me to be like, hey, let me just communicate, wild. So when we do that, when we write out the amends, I can't tell you how often I've sat with somebody as we're writing out the amends and they're full of that fear. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I can make that amends. And we write it out. And it's like, oh yeah, I could do that. I could do that. And so that's another way in which we build willingness. Probably not today, based on how I am doing for time management. But in the next coming weeks, I'll explain how we lay out the amends and how I do it. And if it's different than how you do it, you're right, I'm wrong. As I was talking about the columns and how I like to set up the 8-step list, I know that there are people in parts of the world that write out their amends on little cue cards, which I will tell you, the stationary nerd in me loves that. Oh, I love it. And they'll put the cue cards in little piles of willingness. The right now pile, the later pile, the maybe pile, and the F no over my dead body pile. Woo! That's a pile of something, let me tell you that pile. And they work off of that. And that's wonderful. So if I'm saying anything that's different, you're right, I'm wrong. But I will say, don't knock amends roulette or an amender until you tried it. It's a lot of fun. And so you're like, it does not sound like it. This is what I mean. The 12 steps are ineffable. You can kind of, bear with me, you can kind of tell when somebody's made amends and when they haven't. When we haven't made amends, it's like that fear. It's like, no, you don't understand. It's going to go so awful. But when we've made a bunch of amends, we kind of get a feel for it. And even when it doesn't go well, it's okay. It's okay. We'll talk about that. Man, I am all over the place. A little more so than usual. No, probably right on track for usual. It's actually some of you are like, no, that's what it is. So if you're here for the first time, this is as bad as it normally is. Thanks for coming. Please come back. Love you lots. All righty. All right. So it says, now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. So we're not just amending the things that I did in my drunken or drug-addicted debauchery. I'm not, of course I am. But what am I amending? I'm amending the harms that I have caused based on me living in self, on me trying to play God in my life and the lives of those around me. That's what I'm making amends for. And of course, that will include all the drunken, all the drug addict, all of that debauchery. But it'll also look like stone cold sober and trying to fix, manage, and control your life. Oh, and isn't that the worst? Isn't that the worst when you got to make amends for things you do in sobriety? Oh, Because you can't even be like, hey, listen, I was a raging crackhead. That's me. No, it's like, I'm a jerk, and I was just a jerk to you yesterday. So that a little bit of humility there. But what I'm trying to do is sweep away the debris which has accumulated, and I'm trying to clear away my side. Now, at this point, we are not focusing on their side. Their side is resentments column 2, and then it is all on me and what I did. So it says, if we haven't the will to do this, and this is what I love, is the book Alcoholics Anonymous meets me where I'm at. And the 9th step, the 8th step is where I have the most resistance, the most fear. I'll tell you probably why. I'll tell you why in my experience and a lot of the people that I work with. Usually when we go through our resentments, it's mom, dad, and the ex. And then maybe a different ex. And then, we get a little varied. But mom and dad, number one, the ex. Now, if we write fears just from our heart or from our mind, here's the order: rejection, abandonment. And then it gets a little bit more varied. Those are the 2 big fears that are visible and that drive almost every human being. And why am I afraid of making amends? I am afraid that I will show up in a position of vulnerability. Because it's vulnerable to be like, I was wrong, I hurt you, and this is how. And that you're going to then reject me. And so I'm afraid. And it is natural and normal and human to be afraid. The book is not expecting you to just suck it up and go do it. I mean, it will give us some directions on that, but it is going to meet us in our resistance, meet us in our fear, meet us in our unwillingness. And that is what I love about this book. And that is what I found that God does too. It meets me in my resistance. God meets me in my unwillingness. God meets me in my fear. And if I'm willing to take action, I can build momentum upon it. So if I do not have the willingness, here's the direction. It's not being shame. It's not you're bad. Bad. It's not any of that. We take action. If we haven't the will to do it, we ask until it comes. And in this book, anytime we see the phrase we ask, that is a prayer. So God, I pray for the willingness. I pray, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, I pray for the willingness. And here's the thing, I can do that with absolutely any spiritual action. If there is anything that I don't want to do, anything that I'm afraid to do, anything that I'm uncertain about, I can pray for the willingness. And the coolest thing is if I am at least willing to pray for that willingness, man, I'm on my way. If I'm not willing to take any action, my inaction will build momentum. But if I can take action, that action and that consistency with action will build momentum. And I've seen that. I've worked with so many sponsees doing deep dives and making all of these amends. And when we're making them, like reaching out to a whole bunch all at once and then another set in a couple days, going after it like that, man, it's easy to continue. But when we get stalled out, it's so hard to send those approaches again. And also, if we're afraid of making amends, guess what else we can do to help build our willingness? Inventory. I'm wearing red, but it's not my inventory behooves me hoodie. Inventory. We can write inventory. So if I'm afraid to make amends, I can write inventory on the fear of making amends. We can utilize the tools that we've already picked up, the actions, the principles, which for me are the actions of the 12 steps to help build that willingness. So it says we ask until it comes. And here is another way in which we can build willingness, which is rude. I'm just going to spoil it. It is rude. Can you believe they're going to call us out in this next sentence? Oh. So it says, remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Oh, man, what? You throwing that in my face? Oh, not cool, big book, And if you're here today, you're like, wait a minute. When did I agree to do that? Well, there's a number of places. One of them is on page 90, if your sponsor took you through it in that way. But if you went through the book or went through the study in a chronological way, I got some news. It was on page 58. 58? Kicking off the chapter, how it works? Yeah, that thing that we read at almost every meeting. Oh, we're going to throw that at me? Yup. And it's partway down the thing where it says, if you decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. Oh man, I agreed. And I have this talk that I sometimes do about the threads of the third step. The third step is a monumental decision that I am making. I'm going to decide to live a brand new way of life. Why? Because the way I'm living does not work. Now, that decision without action does not carry any weight. But every time I take an action subsequent to that third step, so I write out my resentments. I write out my fears. I write out my sex conduct. I do my fifth step. I take that quiet hour. I do my 6 and 7. I come to steps 8 and 9, and I dive into this process. It is a continuation on the promise, on the commitment that I made in the third step. Now, if you're here with me when we did read how it works, I would have mentioned that is going to bite us in the butt. Here is where the butt is getting bitten. I started that sentence. I'm like, I don't think I should finish it. I finished it. This is where it's like, oh man, you're holding me up to my decision. Absolutely. So it says, remember it was agreed at the very beginning that we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. And you see, if I'm struggling with 8 and 9, there is a possibility it is a third step problem that I really haven't made that decision. But the reason I would not have made that decision, the reason I would be struggling with the third step is because I don't have an understanding of step 1. Or I don't have an experience in or my window is closing and I've been going too slowly. To be honest, that's usually what it is. Because again, step 1 is that I can never, ever, ever safely drink or use or engage in whatever behavior, because this is an all-inclusive study, whatever brings you here, that I can never, ever do it again, and I will. That relapse is inevitable and is imminent. And if I know the living hell of my active addiction awaits on the other side of my complacency, there is a fire that lights under me. I got to do this. And that pain from living the way that I'm living is stronger than my fear. But if I take my time, if I try to do 1 amend a week, or I try to go like really slowly with this thing, I lose that momentum. I lose that fire. And I've shared this before. Man, I am controversial today. I don't believe that bottom exists. Because a lot of the way in which I know, shocking, or you're tired, sorry. Either way, it's fine. I don't believe bottom exists. Because oftentimes I'm in rooms and I hear about bottom as some magical place where the pain is so bad and then you can stay sober forever. And that place doesn't exist if I have this illness. If I have the illness that is outlined in this book, I will hit time after time after time after time a place where the pain is insufferable, where I cannot stand the way that I'm feeling. And what opens me up, or what opens up within me, is a window where I'm willing to take action that I previously was unwilling to take. And if I do not take the action of all 12 steps, that window will inevitably close. And when that window closes, I will drink or use or act out in whatever addictive behavior it is. I will do it again. That's what's happening. So it goes on to say, probably there are still some misgivings. So even we're praying for willingness, even we're reminded that we made this commitment, we're writing it out, we're in an amender, and our team is about 2 amends behind, and we know we've got to do it. We still might have some misgivings. We're like, I don't want to do it. That is human and that is normal. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we've hurt, we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. So we might not feel, the dictionary definition of diffident is not jazzercised. That's, I'm sure Rob will put that exact dictionary definition in the chat. See, it says diffident, shy, hesitant, distrustful, semicolon, not jazzercised. Uh, I'm so sorry if people were literally like, when you're taking notes and you're not fully paying attention. And if you wrote down not jazzercised, I'm so sorry. But so we might not want to go to these people on a spiritual basis. Because again, what is the program? The program is what is the directions that are outlined in this book. That is the program, and the program is spiritual in nature. The program is to bring about a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. And it says, so we might not want to be like, hey, I'm doing this so that I have a spiritual awakening. And in 2025, I find that a lot of people don't talk about it in that way or don't explain it in that way. But there are sometimes people that will be like, do I have to tell them I'm in a 12-step fellowship? Do I have to tell them that I'm in AA or CA or whatever fellowship you are a part of? And I say, no, you don't have to. But if you make enough amends, you know how God can move an amends. And you know how often a 9-step amend can and does turn into a 12-step call. So I'll just throw that out there. You don't have to. I'm not going to make you. We'll talk about making approaches, and I'll talk about different ways we can make it if we don't want to say that. So it says, let us be reassured. To some people, we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. So what it's saying is like, hey, we don't necessarily need to show up and be like, I am a spiritual being now. I am so spiritual. Listen, my halo's so bright. Look at that. You're going to need shades, like, woo, I am Little Miss Spiritual Pants. I can't even, like, I am an enlightened being. I have experienced enlightenment. I am the bodhisattva of something or something, no. That's not how we show up. It says we might prejudice them. So we're not leaning hard on that because they might be like, dude, oh, you're better than everyone. It says at the moment we are trying to put our lives in order, but that is not an end in itself. Our real purpose, now this line is important, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And you see, of course, we are going through this process of amends so that we don't die of this horrific illness, for sure. And if you've been sober a while and you haven't done this course of action and you're feeling compelled to, you're probably doing it so that you're not experiencing the pain that is enveloping you at the moment. For sure. We don't need good motives to do it. But it says, but this is not an end in itself. Our real purpose, why we make our amends, is so that we get to be of service to God and the people about us. Wait a minute, when did I agree that I was going to do that? Step 3. It's in the 3rd step. That's when I agreed we were going to do that, right? I got fired from the management position of my life for gross incompetence. My life was unmanageable. I got fired. New management came in. Yeah, thank you, Rob, because that's where we're going to be ending, which is as I saw that, I'm like, oh man, we are not finishing this paragraph. But I went for it anyways, instead of ending early. I'm like, no, we're just marching ahead. But I agreed to do this in step 3, that I'm going to work for this power and I'm going to be of service to those about me. Now, I'll tell you something, though. When I work with my sponsees, there's been a lot of times, the people that I help, the privilege that I have to help them, a lot of times they will say, I'm willing to make amends because I know it's not about me. It's about the other person. And I don't say anything because they're willing to make amends. And sometimes they'll say, I'm willing to make amends because I know it's not about the other person. I know it's about me. And I don't say anything because they are willing to make amends. I don't correct them. I know when not to be pedantic. Just go do. And so that's kind of the takeaway is just go do. My action will overcome my inaction. Consistency overcomes complacency, and complacency is a killer for people like me. And so we're right at the hour. So next week, we will pick up in the middle of the paragraph, which is the most logical place to end on. And what I'll do is I'll stop the recording and we can wrap it up with the Serenity Prayer. Thank you guys so much.